A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist. A link is given in the video description. Episode 73. What on earth is this about? After scrutinizing Lucian for a while to ensure he wasn't faking gratitude, Colby felt a stir of emotions. "What's your relationship with Dr. Jarvis now?" he blurted out. Upon hearing that, Lucian suddenly recalled how Colby had mocked him when he first showed up. "Gosh! I was so worried about Roxanne that I completely forgot his words. I doubt I would have remembered them if he hadn't asked that question. She and I are together, just like you've guessed," Lucian answered truthfully, his brows furrowed ever so slightly. "I've already proposed to her, and we'll hold the wedding once she's woken up. Technically, Roxanne hasn't agreed to my proposal, and it's also highly probable that she might turn me down. Nevertheless, I'll do everything I can to make her say yes. I don't want to experience the torment of losing her again." A glimmer of surprise instantly flashed across Colby's eyes. However, when he thought back to Lucian's earlier attitude, a mix of relief and bitterness washed over him. "Of course. Of the three of us, you've always had the best chance of winning her heart. After all, neither Jack nor I could love Roxanne without any agenda. Lucian's different from us, though. He already has ample power and wealth, so his love for Roxanne is undeniably pure and free of ulterior motives." Feeling somewhat perplexed by Colby's sudden change in demeanor, Lucian stood rooted to the spot and stared silently. Seconds later, Colby lowered his gaze in defeat. "I can feel that Dr. Jarvis has always cared a lot about you, except she's never wanted to admit her feelings. I, on the other hand, had also chosen to lie to myself. In all honesty, you're the only one she's ever loved. Whether it's 6 years ago or now, her love for you has never changed." Lucian was overjoyed, but it wasn't long before he narrowed his eyes, seemingly having thought of something. "Wait a minute. 6 years ago? If it's true that Roxanne hasn't stopped loving me, then what's the deal with Archie and Benny? Even though Dr. Jarvis kept lying to herself, those two kids have always been on your side," Colby added with a bitter chuckle. "The bond of the blood sure is astonishing. The two boys had never met you before, yet they were still naturally drawn to you. As it turned out, Roxanne was already pregnant when she and Colby first met at Harvey's Research Institute. He was very clear about Archie and Benny's family background, so when he returned home and saw how well the boys were getting along with Lucian, he couldn't help but feel a sense of crisis." Lucian's frown deepened as he grew increasingly shocked. "What did you say? What's this about the bond of the blood?" This time around, it was Colby's turn to be surprised. "Hey? Don't you know?" Lucian shook his head while images of Archie's and Benny's faces continuously popped into his mind. "Are those two boys really Roxanne's and mine? Why hasn't she ever said a word about it? Then again, if they aren't my kids, why do I always feel so close and comfortable around them? I used to think it was only because the boys were highly likable, but looking back at it, I don't remember ever losing my temper when they and Roxanne shunned me. It's almost as if I treat them the way I treat Essie. They're all equally important to me." The more Lucian tried to piece everything together, the more suspicions he had about Archie and Benny. More importantly, they claimed that their father has never appeared, and Roxanne forbids them from bringing the topic up too. With that, Lucian recomposed himself and shot a stern look at Colby. Tell me. What on earth is this about? They are your children, oh, come on. Did you honestly think Dr. Jarvis had Archie and Benny with another man? Colby said, clearly amused by Lucian's reaction. Of course, Colby had hit the nail on the head, and the latter's face instantly darkened. The next second, Colby frowned and glanced at the man. I'm suddenly regretting my decision. How did Dr. Jarvis agree to be with you when you still refuse to believe in her? After 6 long years, I know better than anyone else how Roxanne rejects other men. I can even confidently say that she wouldn't bother interacting with us if it weren't for our work in the medical field. However, Lucian is still under the impression that she bore children with another man. What a joke! Even though Colby hadn't said anything, the silence was enough of a statement. By then, Lucian's expression had gotten even gloomier. For some reason, he could begin to see the facial similarities between him and the boys, but then again, could that merely be the power of suggestion? Thankfully, Colby decided to face reality and tell Lucian the truth. Those 2 boys are your children with Dr. Jarvis. Why else do you think they're so close to you? However, judging by your reaction, I suppose she hasn't broken the news to you. As for why she hasn't done so, I assume she still doesn't trust you enough. It's just like how you don't fully trust her. With that, Colby let out a derisive snort. Ha! You aren't all that impressive after all, Mr. Farwell. The veins in Lucian's forehead bulged as he remained in shock. Do you have evidence that Archie and Benny are my sons? Remember Roxanne mentioning that Archie and Benny are a year younger than Essie? Wait. Has she been lying to me since then? I've been working with Dr. Jarvis since the first year she went abroad. When it comes to the timing of her pregnancy or the men she had had contact with, I'm the one who knows best. There's no doubt that you're the boy's father. Colby snapped. Those words hit Lucian like a bolt of lightning, and for a moment, he was stupefied. Archie and Benny are mine, hey? My goodness! Should I feel happy or sad? I'm overjoyed that Roxanne has never hooked up with other men and that the 2 boys are my sons. At the same time, I can't believe she's been hiding such a massive secret from me. Am I that unreliable to her? Why else would she want to hide the boy's parentage from me? I can understand if she hid it from me when we weren't together, but our relationship has progressed so much. Why didn't she tell me the truth? Unfortunately, Colby took Lucian's silence as a sign that the latter still had doubts. He said coldly, if you don't believe me, you can always do a paternity test, Mr. Farwell. In any case, I don't have a reason to lie to you. What good would I get out of it? I can't believe you're so paranoid. No wonder Dr. Jarvis doesn't want to tell you the truth. Upon hearing that, Lucian finally snapped out of his daze and tucked his complicated ball of emotions away. His voice, however, still gave away how anxious he was. Thank you for your concern, Dr. Galloway, but I think I'll confirm it with Roxanne. For now, it'd be best for everyone if you concentrated on her illness instead. After all, none of us knows how much longer she can wait. Colby's gaze flickered as he was reminded of Roxanne's condition. Having lost his mood to fight, he lowered his head and fell silent. With that, Lucian shot him an unfathomable look and strode off. Someone I cannot have. After leaving the prison, Lucian returned to his car with a heavy heart. Roxanne's condition had already left him feeling suffocated, and his conversation with Colby didn't help either. In fact, he was even more dumbfounded than ever. Now that I think of it, Roxanne probably distanced herself from me on several occasions because I was getting too close to the boys. Was she afraid that I'd find out about their background? Or was she worried I'd marry Aubrey and fight for custody of the kids? Arg! What is it exactly? Lucian's mind was a tangled mess, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't figure out why Roxanne did what she did. Eventually, he had no choice but to set the matter aside. If I want to know her reasons, I can always ask her when she's awake. The top priority now is to get her out of the coma. Back at Damaris Group, Jack returned to his office after getting someone to send Hector away. Surprisingly, Lucian's hardball tactics from that afternoon had worked their magic. Even though Jack's expression remained impassive, he quickly instructed his assistant, Kevin, to prepare a list of Farwell Group's subsidiaries. Come to think of it, Farwell Group's subsidiaries do have more room for development than the Research Institute and Pharmaceuticals. Why shouldn't I consider Lucian's offer when the main thing I'm after is money? As it turned out, Farwell Group had almost 100 subsidiaries, but Kevin did an excellent job sorting them out and listing all the details. With that, Jack began reading through and making a careful selection. After 3 long hours, he finally settled on the most promising companies and turned to Kevin, looking very proud of himself. Take a look. What do you think of these 10 companies? Kevin couldn't help but wonder if he had misheard the number, but upon going through the document, he was shocked to see that his boss wasn't lying about the 10 companies. Oh my! But these are 10 of the most profitable subsidiaries of Farwell Group. Any one of them will be enough to support Damaris Group's expenses, yet Mr. Damaris is asking for 10. By then, Kevin could feel his hands shaking. MMR Damaris, isn't this a little too much? Mr. Farwell is no pushover. There's no way he'd agree to such an unreasonable demand. For all we know, this might even piss Mr. Farwell off. When that happens, Damaris Group will be doomed. Jack instantly shot his assistant a glare. How short-sighted! You're still young, for goodness sake. Why do you have the same view as that old geezer? After hearing how rudely Jack referred to Hector, Kevin lowered his head in fear, not daring to answer. If we want to expand Damaris Group, we'd need large sums of capital. Since Roxanne's life is now in my hands, Lucian will pay any amount of money for me to save her. I'm only asking for 10 companies. Is that such a big deal to the powerful Farwell Group? Jack bellowed, his eyes burning with desire. That assurance, however, did little to allay Kevin's fears. So, Mr. Damaris wants to play mind games with Mr. Farwell. Then again, Mr. Farwell is not one to be underestimated. After all, he single-handedly developed Farwell Group to its current state. Can Mr. Damaris really beat him? Other than these 10 companies, Roxanne's Research Institute and all the new medicines developed by it will also be mine. Jack exclaimed. As for Roxanne, Kevin's heart skipped a beat. If I can't have her, why should anyone else be able to? Jack continued, his face cold and unfeeling. I want them to know the consequences of going against me. There was no knowing what was on Jack's mind. Nevertheless, his spine-chilling smile frightened Kevin so much that the latter looked away in fear. I can give them away seconds later. Jack's gaze darkened as he turned to his assistant. Call Lucian and arrange a meeting with him tonight. Kevin nodded without hesitation, grateful that he could finally leave the scary atmosphere in the office to make the call. However, just as Kevin was about to take his leave, Jack's voice boomed out. Stop right there! You can make the call here. I want to hear Lucian giving in to my demands. With his head still hung low, Kevin shuddered and hastily fished out his phone to call Lucian. Fortunately, the call got through after just a few rings. Hello, Mr. Farwell. I'm Mr. Damaris' assistant, Kevin greeted. On the other end, an inscrutable Lucian stopped the car by the road and held the phone to his ear. Has Jack Damaris made a decision? Kevin had put his phone on speaker so Jack could hear the conversation clearly in the silent office. Alas, the latter's expression turned grim when he heard Lucian addressing him by his full name. Kevin tensed up at the sight of his boss' reaction and knew he'd have to proceed with caution. Mr. Damaris would like to meet up with you tonight. I'll text you the time and location in a bit. Is that okay? Sure, Lucian replied without hesitation. I thought Jack would try to stall this as much as possible, but now that he wishes to hold the discussion, I'm more than happy to abide. Furthermore, I'm also curious why he has dragged this out for so long. What does he want exactly? Kevin ended the call at Jack's instruction and quickly booked a hotel's private dining room for the meeting. With that, he texted the details to Lucian as promised. Instead of replying to the text, Lucian started his engine and drove straight to the hotel. At 9 o'clock that night, the two men appeared at the hotel entrance almost simultaneously. You sure are punctual, Mr. Farwell. Jack said smilingly and almost with a hint of flattery. Lucian, on the contrary, maintained his icy cold expression and strode into the hotel without a word. Jack glowered at the man's retreating figure, but within seconds, a smile was back on his face. You won't be this smug much longer, Lucian Farwell. Jack muttered to himself before entering the hotel. By the time he walked up the stairs, Lucian had already made himself comfortable in the room. Grinning, Jack sat opposite him and instructed Kevin to have the hotel staff serve the food. No, thanks. I'm not here to have dinner with you, Lucian said impassively. Go on and tell me what you want, Mr. Damaris. In response, Jack politely called for Kevin and gestured for the necessary documents. Without further ado, the latter pulled out a folder and handed it over. Take a look at this, Mr. Farwell, Jack urged as he slid the folder toward Lucian. These are the 10 Farwell Group subsidiaries that I've painstakingly selected. I wonder if you'd be willing to part with them. To his surprise, Lucian didn't even bother flipping through the documents. He merely glanced at the cover and nodded his acknowledgement. It's an honor for these companies to have you take a liking to them, Mr. Damaris. Jack scrutinized Lucian's expression and decided to push his luck. In that case, I'd like to buy all the shares of these 10 companies at half the market price. Would you be okay with that, too, Mr. Farwell? If you like, I can even give them to you for free, Mr. Damaris, Lucian replied as he stared at Jack. It doesn't take a genius to see how ambitious Jack is. The 10 companies can't be the only things he wants. He only made the previous requests to test how far I was willing to go. With that thought in mind, Lucian turned grim and steeled himself for what was to follow. What is this attitude? Do you have any other requests, Mr. Damaris? Lucian asked when Jack did not reply. Upon hearing that, Jack pretended to be puzzled and asked, "Am I that insatiable in your eyes, Mr. Farwell?" Lucian responded in the same manner, "Are you not? If you have no other requests, I'll sign the transfer agreement right now." There was a brief moment of silence in the private room. A while later, Jack smiled and clapped his hands. As expected of Mr. Farwell. You are a smart man. It's always a pleasure to talk business with someone like you. Lucian remained unfazed as he stared at Jack coldly. I don't have time to waste on you. Get to the point. Jack stopped clapping and replied icily, I won't beat around the bush then. I want Farwell Group and Queen Group to give up their collaborations with the Research Institute. My newly established company will step in and take over. I'll sign a long-term contract with the Research Institute so all their future achievements will be shared with my company. He pretended to be generous and added, of course, I'm not that greedy either. My company will share half the profits from the sales of the medication with the Research Institute. I won't let their efforts go to waste. Lucian shuddered in disgust when he saw the smug look on Jack's face. He wanted nothing more than to destroy the person before him. Yet when he thought of Roxanne, he had no choice but to swallow his anger. I can't make any decisions for the Research Institute, but I can promise you that Farwell Group and Queen Group will announce their termination of the contract with the Research Institute starting tomorrow. As for the other matters, you'd have to wait for Roxanne to wake up to discuss them with her. Lucian tried his best to sound calm. Jack already expected Lucian to say that and did not press further. Instead, he sighed and said, Mr. Farwell, I underestimated your love for Ms. Jarvis. I can't believe you agreed to my requests without any hesitation. He then changed his tone. In a deliberately vague manner, he asked, but I do want to know one thing. Would you agree to anything I asked for? In other words, he had more demands. Lucian scrunched his eyebrows, and his expression turned grim. What else do you want? Jack replied, I want you to find another woman and marry her before Roxanne wakes up. Plus, you need to announce this to the public and make sure that it is the first thing Roxanne hears of when she wakes up. As if he still had not had enough of pushing Lucian's buttons, he added, as long as you agree to never be with Roxanne, I promise to wake her up. Lucian was furious and exuded a murderous aura. Sensing the change in Lucian's attitude, Jack sighed. Mr. Farwell, just what is this attitude you're giving me? Don't you want to save Ms. Jarvis? Mr. Damaris, I advise you not to overstep your boundaries, Lucian warned as he tried to suppress his anger. Jack narrowed his eyes. Have you not noticed, Mr. Farwell? This is my main request. Since I can't have Ms. Jarvis, then I won't let other men have her. In this world, Roxanne can only be with me. There can be no other men. Think about it, Mr. Farwell. Ms. Jarvis and I are both doctors and have a lot in common. Only we can help each other. As long as she's with me, she'll be able to reach her full potential. Jack got more enthusiastic the more he talked. He was exhilarated when he saw Lucian grow angry but was helpless to do anything about it. 3 days Jack was full of confidence as he used Roxanne's life as a bargaining tool. If Lucian wanted to save Roxanne, he would have to agree to Jack's requests. If that were the case, with time, the Damaris family would not only be known as a prestigious medical family but could also be compared to the Farwell family. This is the Damaris group that I've always imagined it to be. Lucian was not the only one who could expand the influence of his company with his own ability. Jack could also make Damaris Group undergo drastic changes. 3 days. Jack held out 3 fingers. I'll give you 3 days. I hope you'll give me a satisfactory answer by then. I only have 3 requests, and you have to agree to all of them. He shot a triumphant look at the person before him, as though he could already see his victory. Lucian balled his hands into fists as his tone turned ice cold. What if I don't agree to them? What will you do, Mr. Damaris? Are you so sure that you're the only one who has the antidote to the poison? Jack seemed to take Lucian's words as a joke and started laughing before he regained his composure and replied, "Of course. My poison is created from a mix of the 4 peculiar poisons. No one will be able to create the antidote. I'm afraid those idiots won't even be able to guess the medicinal herbs I used." He acted kind and reminded him, "I'd advise you not to do anything pointless. There are so many medicinal herbs in the world. There's a possibility that those idiots would use medicinal herbs that contradict the ones I used. By then, I won't have any say in Ms. Jarvis' life or death." Lucian pressed on, "Mr. Damaris, you were the one who poisoned Roxanne. Did you forget what happened with Colby? Do you want to become like him and stay in jail for a few years before you come to a realization and regret it?" Jack stared at him in disdain. "Colby was caught because you found dirt on him. He had no choice but to admit to his crimes. It serves him right to be jailed." Lucian asked in a deep voice, "Are you that certain I won't find dirt on you, Mr. Damaris? By then, even if you don't want to save her, there'll be someone to force you to do it." Jack was confident in himself. "Mr. Farwell, aren't you too confident? Talk to me about all this when you actually find evidence." He had been in the medical field for many years. Naturally, he knew how great his poisoning tactics were. Forget about Lucian. Even if he asked Grandpa to come, it would be a waste of time. He had just recently developed that essential oil. Lucian's eyes darkened when he saw how confident Jack was. He clenched his teeth and suppressed his urge to beat the latter up. Jack crossed his legs and rested an arm on the back of the chair as he narrowed his eyes at Lucian. "I'll give you 3 days. If you think that's too long, how about 1 day? That'll be just right since it'll be the same as the time you gave me to think." Lucian met his gaze. He had regained his composure and calmly replied, 3 days. I'll give you an answer after 3 days. Colby still needed time. Lucian could not bear to act rashly. Jack chuckled and held out his hand. "Please leave then, Mr. Farwell." I thought Lucian was tough, but looking at him now, he's not that impressive after all. Lucian was expressionless as he got up and left the private room of the hotel. After watching Lucian leave the private room, Jack's assistant, Kevin, carefully reported Roxanne's situation. Ms. Jarvis is still unconscious. Mr. Farwell found many famous doctors to diagnose her, but until now, they still have no leads. Jack was not surprised. I've already said that he can only beg me to save her. He then pretended to be disappointed and sighed as he said, Roxanne is so ungrateful. If she had only agreed to be with me, then she wouldn't have had to go through all this. What a pity. When is Mommy coming home? It was already 9 at night when Lucian left the hotel. Starting the car, he wanted to return to the hospital. He was still worried even though Marilyn was there with Roxanne. However, just as he started driving, his phone rang. He took his phone and saw it was an incoming call from Benny. Lucian thought of what Colby had said that afternoon and subconsciously felt warmth fill his heart when he saw Benny's name on his phone screen. Daddy, are you not coming back tonight either? Benny's voice quickly rang in Lucian's ear when the call connected. His tone was filled with dejection and anticipation. Lucian could already imagine the 3 children waiting eagerly at home. If Roxanne were awake, she would have asked me to go home and comfort them. As he thought of that, Lucian slowed down and turned the car around, making his way home. While he did that, he comforted Benny, I'm on my way home. Have you all had dinner? Benny's tone turned happy as he said, we haven't. We're waiting for you to come and eat with us. Benny's words moved Lucian. I got it. I'll be home soon. Benny responded cutely, okay. After hanging up, Lucian looked at himself through the rearview mirror. The person in the mirror had a serious expression, and his eyebrows were furrowed deeply. Anyone could tell he was in a bad mood at first glance. I might scare the children if I go back looking like this. On his way home, Lucian kept glancing at himself through the rearview mirror to control his expression. By the time his car stopped at the Farwell residence, he had already successfully concealed all his anger. Daddy! When they heard the commotion outside, the children excitedly ran out to welcome him home. Catalina was worried and hurried to follow behind them. When she saw that Lucian had returned, she breathed a sigh of relief and went back to the living room. The 3 children surrounded Lucian and jumped up and down in excitement. Lucian felt the heavy load on his heart lighten when he saw them. Daddy, are you very busy? Did you eat dinner yet? Daddy, I'm hungry. Let's go in quickly and eat dinner. Estella and Benny grabbed Lucian's hands affectionately and pulled him into the manor. There was also a smile on Archie's face, but he still looked concerned. Lucian knitted his eyebrows when he noticed Archie's unusual emotion. Concerned, he asked, Archie, what's wrong? Do you have something on your mind? Archie frowned and curiously asked, Daddy, where's Mommy? She would always let us know before she went on business trips. She'd also call us when she arrived. However, there was no news from her this time. Plus, she had not picked up any of their calls either. Lucian's gaze slightly darkened when he heard Archie mention Roxanne. However, he soon regained his composure and bent down to comfort Archie by ruffling the boy's hair. Your mommy went in a rush this time, so she only had time to tell me. She went to a mountain for a medical consultation, and the signal there is bad. I'm sure she'll call us when she gets a signal. He had thought about what to say during the entire journey home. Hopefully, the children won't be able to detect any flaws in that excuse. Sure enough, the children were not suspicious of him. However, when they heard that Roxanne had gone to a mountain, they kept asking questions regarding her safety there. "Daddy, are there any wild animals in the mountain? Will Mommy get hurt? Is the mountain a remote area? Did Mommy go alone? When is Mommy coming home?" Lucian was rendered speechless. "Be good and stay home," Lucian replied to every single one of the children's innocent questions. Although he had already expected those questions, and it was not hard for him to answer them, he still felt hasted after doing so. When faced with the children's naive and innocent expressions, it required a lot of energy on his part to come up with lies. "Daddy, can't we go look for Mommy?" Estella suddenly asked. She and Roxanne had only reunited not long ago, so she was unwilling to be apart from the woman. Especially after knowing that Roxanne had left for such a faraway place. Lucian's expression stiffened when he heard her question. He almost could not hold back and let his sadness burst out. Yet he stayed silent for a few moments. Suppressing those emotions, he pretended everything was fine as he looked at the children. "I'm quite busy these days, so I can't take you. Your Mommy will probably be gone for only a week. She'll be back when you go on break." With that, he quickly averted his gaze and pretended to be focused on eating dinner, afraid the children would see through his lie. Luckily, the children did not think too much about it. They were just a little disappointed. "Why does Mommy have to be gone for so long? I hope she'll already be waiting for us at home when we come back on Friday night." The emotions that Lucian had tried his best to suppress stirred within him once more. The pain he felt was too great that it made him breathless. He gulped before replying, "She will. When you come back, your Mommy will definitely be waiting at home for you." The children thought he was tired, so they quieted down and helped to put food on his plate. Lucian felt his heart grow heavier. The food he ate was now unappetizing. After dinner, the children clung to him and wanted him to play with them for a while. However, Lucian could not bear to face the children a moment longer. Steeling his heart, he handed the children over to Catalina and prepared to head out. "Daddy, where are you going?" Archie asked in confusion when he saw Lucian heading for the door. "Are you not going to rest at home tonight?" A pained look flashed across Lucian's eyes when he heard Archie's question. He stopped and rubbed his temples to control his expression before turning to look at the young boy. "I have something to discuss with Mr. Queen, so I'll sleep over at his place tonight. Be good, listen to Miss Catalina, and go to bed early." Archie stared at his father, taking in the latter's expression. "Daddy is acting weird. Daddy, did something happen at the company?" He recalled Roxanne's previous behavior and thought Lucian had met with a problem at work. Lucian went along with the flow and answered, "Yeah, but it's not a big problem. I can handle it myself. It's just that I'll be a bit busy these 2 days." Lucian still remembered how the children cried their eyes out when something happened to Roxanne the last time. There's no need for them to know about it this time. They only need to be obedient, stay home, and wait. The children pushed away their thoughts of having fun, and their expressions turned serious when they heard that something haughty happened at Lucian's company. Estella stepped forward and hugged Lucian, encouraging him in a sweet voice, "Good luck, Daddy. You are the best." Archie and Benny hugged him too. Lucian wrapped the three children in his embrace as he slowly calmed down. I got it. I'll do my best. With that, he ruffled the children's hair and asked Catalina to take them to play. Then, he got in his car and left. Down in the dumps just then, Lucian received a call from Madeline. Frowning, he answered the call and immediately inquired about Roxanne's condition. How's Roxanne? Madeline gazed at her best friend on the hospital bed, her voice somber. There are no changes for the time being. But then, we still didn't manage to surmise anything even after discussing her condition for the entire afternoon. After saying that, she sighed helplessly. When Lucian heard her reply, his heart grew increasingly heavier. I'll head over right away. It won't do any good even if you do so when you're not a doctor, Madeline countered. Then, she admitted, I called to ask whether you've tried seeking out the Queen family. After all, the Queen family was also quite prominent in the medical field. If they agreed to help, there were high chances of determining the exact medicinal herbs Roxanne inhaled. Only when she brought up the Queen family did Lucian belatedly remember about that possible avenue. I'll do that at once. Madeline murmured in acknowledgement. Without saying anything further, both of them hung up the phone. Verily, Lucian had been so panicked that he had relegated the most instrumental help available at present to the back of his mind. In fact, if Madeline hadn't given him a call, her existence wouldn't even have occurred to him. At that moment, it was late at night. Jonathan was sitting in his study cross-legged, methodically arranging his work schedule for tomorrow with his assistant. Never had he expected the Queen family to gain a boon for nothing when they had only helped to act as a go-between. The new medicine Roxanne developed will soon cause a huge uproar in the entire medical world, and the Queen family is going to have something to do with that. It'll boost our family's reputation to some extent for sure. At the thought of the Queen family's bright future after the launch of the new medicine, he couldn't help musing inwardly. I was truly lucky to meet Roxanne back then. That aside, helping Lucian to pursue her was the wisest decision of my life. She has brought countless benefits to the Queen family, from the resources I gained after the Pearson family's downfall to this new medicine now. Be it financial resources or reputation, the Queen family's development now is inextricably linked to her. I've really got to thank her when the new medicine is launched. While he was allowing his mind to run free about the unlimited potential in the future, his butler's voice suddenly rang out at the door. Mr. Queen, Mr. Farwell is here and waiting for you downstairs. Hearing that, Jonathan abruptly corralled his thoughts. Why did you have him wait downstairs? Just tell him to come upstairs directly. Not only were their two families friends, but he and Lucian were even as close as brothers. Therefore, he had never asked the latter to wait downstairs. Just as the butler was going to head downstairs to call Lucian, Jonathan came out of the study. Never mind. It might be something serious that he came over at this hour. I'll go downstairs. Having said that, he hurried down the stairs in huge strides. As soon as he reached the landing, he spotted Lucian sitting on the couch, downing coffee like nobody's business. One who didn't know better might even assume that the man was holding a wine glass instead. Why did you come over so late, Lucian? Jonathan's heart sank slightly. Striding over, he sat down beside Lucian and poured himself a cup of coffee. Glimpsing that the coffee in Lucian's cup was already finished, he casually topped it up for the latter. In the next second, the man beside him picked up the cup and took a long chug. He cautiously peered into the cup, only to see that only half of the coffee, which had just been refilled to the brim earlier, remained. Even the coffee grounds inside had diminished significantly. The instant he saw that, realization dawned upon him that his best friend was down in the dumps. Created an opportunity. Why are you here alone? Where's Roxanne? Jonathan gingerly put that question forth, but at the mere mention of Roxanne, the atmosphere in the room dipped frightfully. He hastily zipped his mouth and sat there silently, waiting for Lucian to speak first. An indeterminate time passed before the man's voice broke the silence. He sounded bone-tired. Something has happened to Roxanne. Although Jonathan had long since drawn that conclusion, his heart still clenched when he heard Lucian's tone. Based on his understanding of the man, Roxanne must be in real trouble this time. Is there anything I can do to help? He voluntarily offered. Putting down the cup of coffee, Lucian leaned back against the couch. He lifted his hands and covered his eyes, his voice beyond grim. Jack poisoned her, and she has been unconscious for a day and a night. I got a lot of doctors to check her over, but they are all helpless about her situation. They can't even tell what poison exactly is afflicting her. At his words, sheer shock deluged Jonathan. Jack? He actually dared to, me utterance, he noticed Lucian's grave expression. Immediately, he forcibly suppressed the surprise within him and racked his brain to help figure out a solution. Calm down first. After so many years in the medical industry, the Queen family has some connections. Many renowned doctors have gone into seclusion, and you can't hire them even if you've got money. But if I use my grandfather's name and implore them for help, I can probably budge one or two of them. I'll go and have someone send the invitations right away. As he said that, he whipped out his phone and called his assistant, ordering the latter to prepare the invitations that night itself before sending them out to those skilled doctors living in solitude. Lucian thanked him in a hoarse voice, "Thank you. Could it be that something has happened to Roxanne? Other than that, I can't think of any other reason for him to be in such a foul mood." However, Jonathan frowned in displeasure. There's no need for that between us. If we were really standing on formality, wouldn't I have to prostrate myself before you and Roxanne in gratitude when you've both helped me so much? The Pearson family's resources alone had already enabled the Queen family to expand to almost double its scale in the past. On top of that, the Queen family would enjoy an even more esteemed reputation when Roxanne's new medicine hit the market. Lucian merely heaved a long sigh without responding to that. Perceiving his worry, Jonathan coaxed, "Don't worry. Someone as kind as Roxanne will definitely pull through. In light of her having saved innumerable patients, God won't take her away so easily." Despite his reassurance, he wasn't all that confident about it. After all, the Damaris family had withdrawn from society for the past few years and had a century of experience in the research of medicinal herbs. I wonder what kind of insidious tactic Jack used. Hopefully, that's true. Lucian sat upright. He lifted a hand and picked up his cup of coffee, hoping to use the beverage to calm the turmoil within him. Unbeknownst to him, his hand holding the cup trembled uncontrollably. Witnessing that, Jonathan was shocked to the core. He had always known that Lucian loved Roxanne deeply, but he had never expected Roxanne's current situation to scare him to such a degree. That said, he was also aware that it was only before him that Lucian could reveal this side of himself. When Lucian stepped out of this house, he would once again become the invulnerable Mr. Farwell in the eyes of outsiders. At that thought, Jonathan inexorably felt sorry for him. He knew better than anyone how difficult it had been for Lucian and Roxanne to end up with each other. Unexpectedly, such a tragedy transpired when they had gotten together at long last. In truth, she could have avoided this. Out of the blue, Lucian's voice drifted into his ears, dripping with self-recrimination. Following that, Jonathan regarded him in puzzlement. She had been negotiating with Jack because of the new medicine, and I helped by giving her a suggestion. Suffer such a tragedy. Jonathan didn't know what to say in response to Lucian's remark. All he could do was comfort the latter awkwardly. This isn't on you. The fault lies with Jack. No matter what you did or didn't do, he would have still looked for an opportunity to make a move against Roxanne. After he had said that, something occurred to him, and he continued, he must have an ulterior motive in doing this. I wonder what it is. Lucian hadn't planned on keeping it from Jonathan's knowledge. Hence, he told the latter briefly about the negotiation between him and Jack when they met just now. Has he lost his mind? After Jonathan heard about Jack's terms, incredulity showed on his face. Never mind that he wants 10 of Farwell Group's most profitable subsidiaries, since Lucian can swiftly make up for them with his capabilities, but what right do they have to make decisions on Roxanne's behalf about her research institute's collaboration when she's still in a coma? Worse still, he even wants Lucian to marry another woman. What exactly is his motive here? Meanwhile, repulsion brimmed in Lucian's eyes. I have no problems with all the other terms other than the final one. I'd never agree to it. I finally won her over, and I'll never let her go again. Even in death, she has to die with me. Jonathan sensed the terrifying aura emanating from the man, but he had no idea what was running through his mind then. For some inexplicable reason, his heart jolted. For that reason, she was exceedingly persistent and sought him out repeatedly. Never had it crossed our minds that every time they met created an opportunity for him to make a move against her. If I hadn't said anything, she undoubtedly wouldn't have been bothered about the profit split. And if she had agreed to Jack's proposal of splitting the profits in half, the subsequent events wouldn't have happened. Nonetheless, the man beside him was still his childhood friend. As such, he merely shuddered but composed himself in the next heartbeat. Nodding, he seconded, Jack has gone too far, his greed knowing no bounds. Sooner or later, he'll reap the consequences of his actions. Subsequently, the two of them solemnly discussed the plan 3 days later if they still couldn't find a way to rouse Roxanne by then, and Jack remained adamant about those 3 conditions. At that moment in time, Frida was in the kitchen. It so happened that she heard Lucian arriving when she came downstairs to get herself a glass of water. Because of the foolish things she did in the past, she hadn't the nerve to face the man. Thus, she wanted to wait until he had gone upstairs before sneaking back up. Little did she expect her brother to come downstairs and for the 2 men to begin chatting on the couch. As she listened to their conversation, she didn't dare make a single peep. In fact, she desperately suppressed her breathing, afraid that they would discover her. Upon hearing her brother and Lucian's exchange in the living room, she couldn't help feeling horrified. While she harbored no fondness toward Roxanne and was very much opposed to her getting together with Lucian, she had never imagined that the woman would suffer such a tragedy. Oh God, Jack actually poisoned her, and even all the acclaimed doctors are helpless about it. Verily, she was glad that she didn't stupidly offend Jack back when she joined hands with Aubrey. I never expected him to be such a two-faced hypocrite. After the initial relief, she inexorably started worrying. If something truly happens to Roxanne because of Jack's poison, my plan with that man will fall through. Upon realizing that, she felt that she needed to make time to contact that man and inform him about the matter before discussing their next step. In the living room, Jonathan and Lucian were wholly focused on Roxanne's matter to the point that they didn't notice someone else's presence in the kitchen. It's late. You're still going back to the hospital? Jonathan asked when they ended their discussion at midnight. In response, Lucian dipped his head a fraction. I worry. Therefore, Jonathan didn't try to convince him to stay but saw him to the door. That man is capable. Have you heard it all? Jonathan watched as Lucian's car disappeared from his line of sight before he whirled around and returned to the living room. With his eyes trained in the direction of the kitchen, he put that question forth in a deep voice. Right then, the living room was empty, and Frida was the only person in the kitchen. Hence, it went without saying who that question was meant for. Her heart clenching slightly, Frida guiltily stepped out of the kitchen. You knew I was here, Jonathan. Honestly speaking, Jonathan had already noticed her presence when he came downstairs earlier. However, he was also aware of his sister's intentions, so he didn't expose her. On the contrary, he tried his best to divert Lucian's attention. On several occasions the man nearly noticed her. You're not allowed to leak out a single word of the conversation between Lucian and me earlier. If I were to learn that you spoke of it to someone else, don't dream of getting involved in anything related to Queen Group anymore for the rest of your life. He warned, a stern expression on his face. Hearing that, Frida bobbed her head hesitantly. Jonathan eyed her with a frown, exasperation flooding him. He then painstakingly analyzed the pros and cons for her benefit. The interests of Queen Group and Farwell Group are closely linked together. If something were to happen to Farwell Group, Queen Group would similarly be affected. If others were to know that Lucian is currently being threatened and has no time to handle other things, they would seize the opportunity to attack Farwell Group. Consequently, Queen Group's interests would also suffer tremendously. I hope you understand that much. I'll go and visit Roxanne tomorrow. Drive safe. Lucian nodded wordlessly before leaving. Shortly after, the headlights of the Bentley lit up, and Lucian drove off. It wasn't until he mentioned Queen Group that Frida sobered up. Got it. I won't tell anyone about it. Jonathan stared at her for a long time. Just when Frida could no longer stand the probing scrutiny and wanted to beat a hasty retreat upstairs, Jonathan's voice rang out slowly. A matter plaguing the Farwell family is also the Queen family's concern. Since you heard everything, help to think of a solution as well. As soon as Frida heard that, her expression stiffened imperceptibly. Faking a chuckle, she declined, Jonathan, the Queen family's connections are in your hands. Even if I want to help, I don't have the capability to do so. You naturally have your own connections, Jonathan drawled expressionlessly. At that, the smile on Frida's face almost slipped. I don't quite understand what you're saying. Where would I get connections? Jonathan's brows knitted together, and his voice turned increasingly somber. I believe that you were close with Aubrey back then for the sake of the Queen family. At present, Jack is already provoking us. If you really care about the Queen family, don't be a fool anymore and continue siding with outsiders. Guilt brimmed in Frida's eyes, but still, she steeled herself to continue denying it. Alas, Jonathan didn't allow her any opportunity to speak. A few days ago, you left the office in the afternoon but only returned late at night. Who did you meet up with? No sooner had his words fallen than Frida's expression changed drastically. Unfortunately, Jonathan cut her off coldly. Don't tell me you went for a drive. I've already sent someone to investigate your whereabouts. That day, you drove to a mansion in the suburbs. The man who sent Aubrey away lives there, yes. Thanks to the foolish things she did previously, Jonathan had practically zero trust in her. That night, he was still worried after she had explained things and sent someone to investigate the matter. Unexpectedly, the investigative results validated his suspicions. Frida had lied to him again. Regarding himself far too highly, a flash of hesitation flittered across Frida's eyes. But at the thought that Roxanne was an indispensable part of their subsequent plan, she ultimately relented. Okay, got it. I'll go and ask him about it. Thereafter, Jonathan added, don't contact him anymore after the incident this time. Someone willing to help Aubrey is definitely no decent man. Frida was chagrined inwardly, but she still agreed docilely on the surface. Then, she spun on her heel and went upstairs. When she returned to her room, she called the phone number Sean gave her for the first time. In no time, someone answered the call on the other end of the phone. Why did you call me at this hour, Ms. Queen? Are you missing me? Sean's voice was incredibly suggestive. Enthralled by his voice, Frida fell into a trance for several seconds. Following that, Sean chuckled, his eyes sparkling with devious glee. We truly have a telepathic connection. That caught Frida off guard. Hey? What do you mean? I happened to be thinking of you, and you called me. What's that if no a telepathic connection? Sean teased. He wanted to know what exactly she was planning with that man, so he had feigned ignorance about it. Right that moment, however, he couldn't help hoping that man would be of help since he must have his own connections. No matter what you've done to Dr. Jarvis with Aubrey in the past, this is the best chance for you to make amends for your mistakes. As that man was capable of sending Aubrey away right under the Farwell family's noses, he undoubtedly has some impressive connections. Perhaps he knows someone who can help Dr. Jarvis, he urged. Splotches of crimson slowly stained Frida's face. She went silent for a few seconds before she finally succeeded in suppressing the shyness and delight within her. Feigning calmness, she stated, I'm seeking you out for something important. Sean's expression remained indifferent, but he sounded earnest beyond words. What is it? As long as it's something to do with you, I'll definitely spare no effort. To him, it was truly a piece of cake to manipulate a naive girl like Frida. When Frida heard that, her heart fluttered once more. Her voice also softened considerably. Roxanne has been poisoned, and no one is able to cure her for the time being. I'd like to ask whether you are acquainted with any skilled doctors. What? Something has happened to Roxanne? In a flash, Sean's expression turned frosty. If my memory serves, she's Lucian's lover. Yet, someone dared to make a move against her? Who did it? And what is the culprit's motive? Sean questioned icily. The change in his tone took Frida aback momentarily before she gathered her wits about her. It was Jack Damaris. From the conversation between my brother and Lucian, I heard that he seemingly wants to use Roxanne to blackmail Lucian, hoping to obtain some benefits from the latter. Him? What a joke! Is he even worthy of having designs on the Farwell family? He's merely from a prestigious family in the medical field. Clearly, he regards himself far too highly. How dare he steal my prey from me? Sean snorted disdainfully. The Farwell family's rival can only be me. If anyone dares to interfere, that's akin to challenging me. His tone struck terror into Frida. In a daze, she felt like she had again seen the man who negotiated with Aubrey that night. Her attraction toward him instantly disappeared into thin air. Fearful, she remained quiet, not daring to utter a word. I got it. There's indeed a renowned doctor living in seclusion in the north. I'll send someone to invite him over immediately. Tell Lucian not to agree to Jack's terms. Sean asserted. If Farwell Group were to be affected by this matter, it'd be downright boring for me when I make my move against Lucian in the future. Emergency treatment at the hospital. Madeline let the experts enter the ward, as she was worried sick about Roxanne. The group stayed in the ward from the afternoon until midnight to figure out a treatment method, but they did not manage to reach a conclusion. Still, Madeline was unwilling to give up. As a doctor, she badly wanted to wake Roxanne with her own ability. However, the experts had already stayed up the whole night yesterday. As most of them were old, they were exhausted after working for so long. Left with no choice, Madeline could only let them rest first. Roxanne, you have incredible medical skills. Can you give me a hint and tell me how to save you? As the ward quieted down, Madeline turned to look at Roxanne on the bed and murmured while holding her hand. I wish I was the one lying here instead. If I were the one unconscious right now, Roxanne would definitely know how to save me. Just as Madeline was immersed in despair and guilt, she saw Roxanne's eyelashes tremble a little. Madeline widened her eyes. Frida acquiesced softly. Seemingly sensing her fear, Sean gentled his voice. I'm only helping because of you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't care whether Roxanne lives or dies. Despite all he had said mere moments ago, Frida couldn't help believing him. She again found herself falling for him. If I manage to convince that doctor to accept my invitation, I'll be coming back with him tomorrow. Will you come and pick me up? Sean coaxed, his eyes narrowed a fraction. Unbidden, Frida's heart skipped a beat. Yeah. Just tell me the time. Chuckling deeply, Sean fed her a few more honeyed words before hanging up the phone. Thinking that it was just her imagination, she tightened her grip around Roxanne's hand and asked, Roxanne? Can you hear me? Slowly, Roxanne's eyebrows furrowed together. It seemed as if she was about to wake up. Madeline was certain she was not seeing things. She hurriedly stood up and pressed the call bell beside the bed. It hadn't been long since the experts left the ward, so Madeline strode out of the ward and yelled at them to return. The experts couldn't help but feel nervous. "What's wrong, Dr. Xander? Did Ms. Jarvis show any response?" Nodding fervently, Madeline said. "Hurry here and take a look. I think she's about to wake up." Then she walked back into the ward to check on Roxanne. The experts followed her and came in one after another. They stared at Roxanne, their sleepiness totally gone thanks to the news that she might be waking up soon. Roxanne's frown deepened. Even though she was unconscious, her face contorted with pain. An expert pointed out uneasily, "I don't think this is a sign of Ms. Jarvis waking up. It's more like..." He trailed off and didn't dare to continue for fear that his words would come true. Madeline was also a doctor herself, after all. When she saw Roxanne's expression, she soon understood what was going on. "Get ready for emergency treatment." Everyone present was an experienced expert, and the ward was well equipped with all kinds of equipment. They quickly decided on the attending doctor, and the others cooperated with him deftly. Roxanne seemed to be in terrible pain. Her face flushed red, and she began gasping for air. Madeline was holding Roxanne's hand when she suddenly felt the latter clutching her hand in return. The grip was so strong that it hurt Madeline. Lowering her head, Madeline could see veins popping out on Roxanne's arm. "Roxanne," Madeline's eyes turned red with tears. "How awful could her pain be that she's gripping me so tightly while she's unconscious? What in the world did Jack do to her?" How much pain when Lucian reached the ward and noticed the experts were nowhere to be seen in the corridor, his heart lurched. He walked up to the door and opened it. The expert's words happened to reach his ears at that moment, and his face darkened immediately. "Mr. Farwell," at the sight of Lucian, the experts lowered their heads in guilt. Before Lucian left, he had asked them to take good care of Roxanne. Now that he saw Roxanne in such a state, they would likely be held accountable for it. Lucian stalked to the bed. Looking at Roxanne's expression of pain, he said, "Don't mind me. Help her first." Even when Colby tampered with the experiment last time, Roxanne did not appear to suffer this much. What drug did Jack use on her that she's hurting so much even when she's unconscious? As Lucian looked at Roxanne, he felt as if he could sense her pain. His heart hurt so badly that he almost could not breathe. Although Madeline was concerned about Roxanne, she stepped aside to make space for Lucian and went to help. Standing beside the bed, Lucian held Roxanne's hand. He felt so heavy-hearted that he couldn't utter a word. How he wished he was the one lying there and suffering instead. After being injected with sedatives, Roxanne looked visibly better. Then and there, Madeline made up her mind that she would never let that hypocritical Jack off. "Don't be scared. You'll be fine soon. I will cure you. I promise I'll cure you." Despite knowing that Roxanne couldn't hear her, Madeline spoke reassuringly and firmly. After some time, the doctor in charge of treating Roxanne wiped away his cold sweat. With a somber expression, he said, "Ms. Jarvis is in pain because her blood vessels are contracting and expanding repeatedly. We can't let this go on. We have to use sedatives on her." Still, the atmosphere was tense as everyone stood there, low-spirited. While the sedatives temporarily relieved Roxanne's symptoms, vasoconstriction was no trivial matter. Roxanne could die from an aneurysm at any time, but they couldn't find the cause of her vasoconstriction. Following another round of emergency treatment, Roxanne's condition was finally under control. The experts were all drenched in sweat and totally drained. "Thank you for your hard work, everyone. Go ahead and rest. Let's continue to think of treatment methods tomorrow," said Madeline before escorting the experts out of the ward. With that, only 3 people were left. Roxanne's face was as white as a sheet as she breathed faintly. While Madeline and Lucian watched her, they felt heartbroken. "Did you drop by the Queen residence? What did Mr. Queen say?" asked Madeline. Lucian closed his eyes to contain the churning emotions within him before repeating Jonathan's words in a grim tone. Madeline's expression turned solemn. "So that means there's nothing the Queen family can do now. I don't know how long we'll have to wait for those recluse legendary doctors." Roxanne. Madeline wasn't sure if Roxanne could hang on until then. At that thought, Madeline finally lost control of her emotions. With tearful eyes, she said, "I've been a doctor for so long, but this is my first time seeing an unconscious patient showing such violent reactions. Just how much pain is Roxanne in?" They couldn't imagine how Roxanne could withstand such suffering with her petite body. "I will cure her. She'll be okay," Lucian declared as he gripped Roxanne's hand. Madeline didn't know to whom those words were directed. Lucian would never allow things to end just like this. They hadn't even held their wedding and done the things they didn't get to do before. Holding back her tears, Madeline stated, "The 3 days Jack mentioned might be the time it would take for the drug to take effect. It hasn't even been 3 days, yet Roxanne is already being tortured like this." Madeline couldn't bring herself to imagine what would actually happen to Roxanne after 3 days. Just the possibility of Roxanne dying due to pain while she was in a coma made Madeline feel suffocated. "See you being alive." When Lucian heard Madeline's words and turned to look at Roxanne's ashen face, he felt as if someone was squeezing his heart forcefully, making it struggle to beat. If what Madeline said is true, and I can't find a way to cure Roxanne in 3 days. At the thought of the ordeal Roxanne might face and the possibility that he could lose her because of that, Lucian could no longer suppress his rage. At that moment, a murderous air surrounded him. He had thought that the worst thing that could happen was him dying with Roxanne. However, they still had 3 children who grew up in incomplete families. The 5 of them had just reunited, and it would be too cruel to abandon the 3 children again. As those thoughts fleeted across Lucian's mind, he was overcome with the urge to tear Jack apart. "This matter happened because of me. Why didn't Jack target me? Why did he have to do something so inhuman to Roxanne?" Mr. Farwell, sensing the murderous air in the ward, Madeline was startled. "Don't be like this. I believe that you'll find a way to wake Roxanne. She'll get through this, even if it's for the sake of you and the children. I will never let Jack Damaris off." Lucian growled with a dark look. He wanted Jack to end up much worse than Colby. Hatred painted Madeline's countenance. "Of course, but Roxanne is the priority now. 3 days will pass by quickly. We have to come up with a way soon." Clenching his jaw, Lucian forced himself to calm down. He let go of Roxanne's hand and said to Madeline, "I will. You must be tired after working the entire day. Go and get some rest. Madeline was unwilling to leave, but she knew Lucian felt as terrible as she was. Maybe he wants to tell Roxanne something in private. With that in mind, Madeline cast a reluctant glance at Roxanne before turning to leave. The door shut with a heavy thud. As Lucian turned back to gaze at the woman on the bed, dejection clouded his features. Roxanne, if I fail to think of a way after 3 days, don't hate me after you wake up. Madeline's words just now had left a huge dent in Lucian's heart. When he returned earlier, Roxanne had already been in agony for a while, so what he had witnessed might not be her most painful moment. Lucian was uncertain if Roxanne would really be able to get through the 3 days. And even if she could, Lucian could not bear to let Roxanne undergo such torment. Upon recalling the scene earlier, Lucian was overwhelmed with a sense of powerlessness. For the first time in his life, he felt useless. He had repeatedly promised Roxanne that he would protect her and the children, yet he was the one who put her in this state. I'm really useless, aren't I? Lucian lifted Roxanne's hand to his lips and kissed it softly, wanting to seek solace. Only Lucian's low voice could be heard in the ward as he murmured, "If I still can't find a way after 3 days, then I can only agree to Jack's request. If you want to hate me after you wake up, hate me all you want. That's still better than you forgetting me. At least I can see you being alive and well if I agree to his request." If they really had to reach that point, Lucian didn't mind letting Roxanne go far away with the 3 children. He'd rather have her hate him and stay away from him than see her lying in the hospital bed like a lifeless person. High and mighty early the next morning, Frida hurried to the airport. She had received a text from Sean the night before stating that he would be returning with that legendary doctor. Frida was so excited that she barely slept. The moment the sun peeked over the horizon, she got up, dressed up, and left the house right on time. Around 10 minutes after she arrived at the airport, she spotted the striking Sean in the crowd. Because of Sean's impressive aura and height, he was always an eye-catching presence wherever he went. In fact, a lot of people around him were staring at him, as they thought he was a celebrity. When Frida saw Sean walking toward her, her heart began to race. As he came to a stop in front of her, she held back her exhilaration and greeted, "You're back." After giving her a once-over, Sean curled his lips and remarked, "You look pretty today." Frida instantly blushed, feeling at a loss for what to respond. "Let me do the introductions. This is old Mr. Lomax, the king of medicine of Morania, who has lived in seclusion for years." Turning to Peregrine Lomax, Sean said respectfully, "Old Mr. Lomax, this is Frida Queen, the granddaughter of the Queen family." Frida's attention was focused on Sean all this time. It was only when Sean began speaking that she realized there was an old man beside him. The old man was thin, and he was considerably tall, as he was just a few centimeters shorter than Sean. Though his face was wrinkly with age, his eyes gleamed coldly and made him look aloof. From the way he carried himself, one could easily see that he was no ordinary man. Moreover, Sean clearly treated him with high regard. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Peregrine," Frida hurriedly greeted politely. Peregrine glanced at her indifferently and replied, "I've seen you when you were young, but I'd prefer you not call me that. Just call me old Mr. Lomax like this young man from the Crawford family." Frida's smile stiffened at that. She only addressed Peregrine that way because she wanted to cotton up to him. Jonathan owned access to the Queen family's connections now. Naturally, Frida wanted to develop her own network as well. To her surprise, the old man before her was way too stubborn. Sean shot Frida a look just then, so she had no choice but to agree meekly. I understand, old Mr. Lomax. Nodding slightly, Peregrine said, Crawford, I'm tired. Where can I rest? With a smile, Sean led the way. The Crawford family's driver was already waiting outside. The trio got into the car, with Frida sitting in the passenger seat. Sean and Peregrine sat in the back. The latter would pipe up occasionally, asking Sean about how the Crawford family was doing lately. Though Peregrine acted high and mighty, Sean did not show any signs of impatience. After all, Peregrine was indeed a capable man. He was not the one who dubbed himself the King of Medicine. Instead, it was a title his peers in the medical field had been calling him by in the past few decades. In fact, Peregrine almost joined the State Secrets Protection Department because of his skills. Sadly, an explosion that happened during a research and development project 16 years ago injured and even killed many of Peregrine's men, causing him to lose his will to go on. The explosion had happened because of him. Although he was not subject to criminal liability since it was an accident, he already labeled himself as an unforgivable sinner. Ever since then, Peregrine had disappeared from everyone's sight and even declined the government's invitation. Get her to introduce you. Sean was merely trying his luck when he went to ask Peregrine for his help. Sean was merely trying his luck when he went to ask Peregrine for his help. When Peregrine was severely injured some time ago, it was the Crawford family who had helped and bore the medical expenses for him and his disciples. The elderly man owed them a debt of gratitude. When Alistair Crawford fell seriously ill years later, the Crawfords invited Peregrine out of seclusion to treat him. In other words, the Crawford and Peregrine had called it quits. Sean had gone to look for Peregrine, not knowing if he would agree to come out of seclusion. Fortunately, the elderly man still appreciated the kindness of the Crawford family. When Sean arrived at his residence and expressed his intentions, Peregrine only hesitated for a moment before agreeing to his request. Back then, the Crawford family saved so many of my disciples. Every life they had saved was a debt I owed. When you asked me to save another person's life, I've no reason to refuse your request. I'll do it. That had been Peregrine's response. He wasted no time and joined Sean on their way to the airport, disregarding the need to pack his belongings. Even Sean found it hard to believe how smoothly everything went. How is old Mr. Queen doing? After asking about the Crawford family's current situation and learning that Alistair was in the pink of health, Peregrine turned to Frida, simply asking out of concern for an old friend. Frida replied respectfully, My grandfather also fell ill recently, but he has just recovered. Do you have the time to visit him and provide treatment for him once more? Frida replied respectfully, My grandfather also fell ill recently, but he has just recovered. Do you have the time to visit him and provide treatment for him once more? She was trying to get in his good books. However, Peregrine was not buying it. It's good that he has recovered. Someone as kind as him will get through anything. I'm only good at pharmacology, so I won't be of great help to him. His children and grandchildren should take good care of him instead. Sensing Frida's attempt to flatter him, Peregrine closed his eyes, leaned back in his chair, and drifted off to sleep after uttering those words. Repay your kindness generously. Frida returned to the Queen residence right away. Jonathan was listening to his assistant's report in the house. Out of all the invitations they had sent, a few reclusive famous doctors were unable to attend while the others had declined the request altogether. In short, not one of them accepted the invitation. Jonathan understood those reclusive experts, who could be experienced and set in their ways, probably had plans of their own. The queens were not particularly close to the reclusive experts they had invited, so they thought using Alfred's name to reach out to them might help. Under normal circumstances, Jonathan would not have handled their rejection well, but the fact that his closest friend's partner was in danger caused him to feel a sense of panic. Jonathan stood up anxiously. "Buy me a plane ticket. I'll go there and meet them in person." The assistant could only stay silent and keep up with him. When they were about to leave the mansion, they bumped into Frida, who was entering the house. Frida was left in a state of awkward silence. None of them uttered a single word throughout the journey. An hour later, the car they traveled in slowly came to a halt at the entrance of a mansion in the suburbs. Sean woke Peregrine up in a low voice. "I didn't take you to the city because I know you appreciate a peaceful environment. This mansion has everything you need, so please make yourself at home." Peregrine remained silent and simply nodded his head in response. He straightened his clothing with a quick pat before gracefully stepping out of the car. "Jonathan, where are you going?" "I found someone who can save Roxanne." Frida's expression lacked joy. Instead, a hint of smugness lingered on her face as she conveyed the news to Jonathan. Upon noticing the expression on Jonathan's face, she knew he had not found anyone. "Yes. I won." Jonathan was visibly anxious and eager to find out the expert she had managed to contact. "Who did you manage to get?" Jonathan was visibly anxious and eager to find out the expert she had managed to contact. "Who did you manage to get?" Frida cleared her throat and said, "I spoke to someone who provided me with the contact of Peregrine Lomax, Morania's king of medicine." Jonathan's eyes widened in shock. "Peregrine Lomax? You managed to get him to come?" Frida's guilt flickered momentarily across her face, but she quickly regained her composure. "I told him about the patient's condition and that she was Dr. Lambert's apprentice. I also mentioned that I was from the Queen family. I think he may have agreed to help because of Grandpa and Dr. Lambert. But he did request a reward of 10 million. Lucian wouldn't mind spending such a small amount of money, would he?" It was not difficult to spot the loopholes in Frida's story, but Jonathan did not have the mental capacity to worry about that. Jonathan confirmed with Frida, "Are you sure that person is Peregrine Lomax? Where is he now, and when will he arrive?" Frida did not like the way he questioned her. "Yes, he is Peregrine Lomax. I arranged for him to rest in the suburbs, but he should arrive soon." Jonathan hesitated for a moment but decided to trust Frida's words. "I have no choice but to believe her." "Okay, I'll contact Lucian right now. You go pick up old Mr. Lomax. We'll go to the hospital immediately once he arrives." Reluctantly, Frida agreed and left to call Sean. She asked him to get someone to send Peregrine to the city while she would wait for him at a designated location, hoping to minimize the travel time. The 4 peculiar poisons. It did not take long for Frida to bring the man over. She only took an hour. It did not take long for Frida to bring the man over. She only took an hour. Jonathan quickly greeted, "Old Mr. Lomax." Peregrine studied the siblings for a moment before turning to speak to Jonathan in a nicer tone. "Where's your grandfather?" Jonathan furrowed his brows and said, "My grandpa isn't in the pink of health. He has been recuperating away from the house recently. If you want to meet him, I'll bring you to him after you treat my friend." Then, fearing that the elderly man would misunderstand his words, he quickly added, "My friend's condition is terrible, and she can't afford to waste any more time. Please forgive me for making you travel this far." Peregrine seemed satisfied with his attitude, for he nodded his head and said, "It's fine. Saving a life is more important." "Where's the patient?" Jonathan immediately replied, "She's at the hospital. I'll bring you to her right now." Jonathan immediately called Lucian and told him the good news. Even though Frida might not have heard of Peregrine, Jonathan knew very well who he was. Besides Jack, old Mr. Lomax will be the only other person in the world who can save Roxanne. Upon learning that Frida had invited a renowned doctor over and hearing Jonathan's effusive praise for the doctor, Lucian felt his body begin to stiffen. 10 million is nothing to me. I'll even pay him 100 million or even 1 billion. The legendary king of medicine was his and Roxanne's last hope. Jonathan also took the opportunity to put in a good word for his sister. "We should thank Frida for bringing him here." Lucian responded in a deep voice, "I'll repay your kindness generously if he can cure Roxanne." Jonathan muttered a casual response before hanging up the phone. "I don't expect you to repay my kindness. My only hope is that you won't hold a grudge against Frida anymore." With that, he strode forward to lead the way. Frida deliberately walked at a slower pace to stay by Peregrine's side in an attempt to make her seem closer to him. After they got into the car, Jonathan drove them to the hospital in a swift but steady manner. A while later, the car came to a stop by the entrance of the hospital. Lucian was already waiting downstairs. After listening to Jonathan's introduction, Lucian figured out that the reclusive experts were prideful individuals. The humbler he showed himself to be, the better the impression they would have of him. After listening to Jonathan's introduction, Lucian figured out that the reclusive experts were prideful individuals. The humbler he showed himself to be, the better the impression they would have of him. That way, they would do their best to treat Roxanne. "Lucian, this is old Mr. Lomax, Peregrine Lomax, a master in medicine." Jonathan was surprised to find Lucian waiting for them downstairs, but he soon realized why Lucian was there. He quickly introduced, "Old Mr. Lomax, this is the current head of the Farwell family, Lucian Farwell." Lucian lowered his head a little and reached out his hand to Peregrine. "I'm sorry for the trouble, old Mr. Lomax. I've already hired famous doctors all over the world to treat her, but none knew how. I hope that you'll be able to give us a tip or two." Peregrine nodded, but he did not shake Lucian's hand. "Etiquettes are not important to me. Bring me to her now." Without hesitation, Lucian retracted his arm and led the way. Peregrine was impressed by Lucian's decisive demeanor. Once they reached the top floor, the doctors were stunned to find out who had come. They were all middle-aged individuals who had heard about the King of Medicine of Marina 16 years ago. In fact, they had heard of him from the news too. They had been young when they learned he had become a hermit, and they felt wistful about the matter. Little did they expect to see him in person that day. The second the man of the legends came, silence draped over the corridor. However, Peregrine ignored them and followed Lucian into the ward. "Do not leave us hanging." Peregrine drew his brows together when he received Lucian's reply. Then he shook his head. Peregrine drew his brows together when he received Lucian's reply. Then he shook his head. Everyone was confused, for they did not know what Peregrine meant by that, but they did not dare to ask him why either. After a long silence, they finally heard Peregrine say, "The 4 peculiar poisons are the 4 peculiar poisons of ancient times. They are Crimson Crane, Eviscerate Grass, Final Day, and Mad Grin. They aren't real, and so there's no way you can get your hands on them." In other words, Jack was still telling him nonsense. Lucian's eyes darkened before a murderous look flashed in them. He could not believe that Jack had lied to him even when he was in that situation. If someone were to take his words seriously and started a treatment plan for Roxanne according to his words, Roxanne would certainly be on the verge of death by then. Upon seeing Roxanne's complexion, Peregrine uttered, "What's going on now? How much do you know about her condition?" Lucian was not well versed in medical jargon, so he turned to look at Madeline. Madeline instantly took out the results of Roxanne's various check-ups since the day before. She then started explaining the data and how Roxanne had been poisoned to Peregrine. Lucian added, "I've asked the one who poisoned her about this, and he said that he used a mixture of the 4 peculiar poisons and made Roxanne inhale it over time in the form of essential oil. Once she inhales a certain amount, the poison will start to do its job." Peregrine narrowed his eyes as he went through the results. When he heard Lucian's words, a dubious look crossed his face. Was she really poisoned by essential oil? Lucian nodded in certainty. "He wouldn't dare to lie to me at that time." Suppressing his anger, Lucian asked politely, "Old Mr. Lomax, what do you think about Roxanne's condition, then?" Peregrine turned to look at Roxanne in silence for a while before saying, "All of you must leave. I need to give her a detailed checkup." No one dared to object to that. Despite their worries for Roxanne, they all left the room. Even Lucian was standing by the entrance, looking into the room through the window on the door. He knew that Peregrine truly wanted to give Roxanne a checkup, but he dared not let Roxanne leave his line of sight with her current condition. "Lucian, old Mr. Lomax is a capable man. I'm sure he'll be able to cure Roxanne," Jonathan reassured Lucian. "Lucian, old Mr. Lomax is a capable man. I'm sure he'll be able to cure Roxanne," Jonathan reassured Lucian. Even Madeline bobbed her head in agreement. Apart from Lucian, there was no one else in the world who was more worried about Roxanne than her. However, as an individual in the medical field, she had heard of the King of Medicine of Marina. Madeline was confident in Peregrine's ability to treat Roxanne. Despite their reassurances, Lucian only nodded at them as he continued to fix his gaze on Roxanne. Peregrine grabbed Roxanne's wrist and started taking her pulse with a solemn look. Once he was done with that, he pulled her eyelids up and checked her lips. He seemed to have discovered something, but through the window, Lucian could only see Peregrine's lips moving as if he was muttering something under his breath. A moment later, Peregrine frowned and strode toward the door. Lucian shifted to the side to open up a path for him. "Summon the doctors who treated her yesterday." Peregrine snapped at Lucian. The doctors, who were standing nearby, shared a look with each other when they heard that. Still, they steeled themselves and went over to Peregrine. Madeline quietly stood at the side as well. "What did you diagnose her with?" Peregrine asked mercilessly as he stared at the reputable doctors. The doctors kept their heads hung low as if they were students faced with a teacher asking them questions that they could not answer. Their faces are red. Peregrine snorted. Young ones nowadays make horrible doctors. Despite the degrading words, no one dared to say anything in retort. No one but Madeline. She asked anxiously, "Old Mr. Lomax, we're not as knowledgeable as we should be. And we'll work harder to improve ourselves in medicine from now on. But please don't leave us hanging right now." "What's wrong with Roxanne?" In an icy voice, Peregrine uttered, "Can't you tell? She's been poisoned." That was something Lucian had told them a long time ago, so they knew about it, but they had not been able to find the symptoms of poisoning. In contrast, Peregrine had managed to come to that conclusion by himself. The patient's arteries are hardening. If this goes on, the blood might burst through the hardened arteries and that'll lead to life-threatening bleeding inside the body. If you let the condition worsen to that point, the patient will be in mortal danger. Peregrine stared at the doctors grimly. "Hang on!" the crowd inhaled sharply as fear crept into their hearts. The crowd inhaled sharply as fear crept into their hearts. "No wonder Mrs. Farwell's arteries became so narrow," someone muttered under their breath. Peregrine had a keen hearing, and he lifted his feet to deliver a light kick on that person's leg. "Why didn't you look more into it if you've already discovered that?" That person was not expecting a kick from Peregrine, but he was not at all angry about it. In fact, he was embarrassed. After all, Peregrine was the role model they admired back when they were younger. It was an honor to be taught a lesson by their role model. The person lowered his head and told Peregrine what happened the night before, adding, "We've already done all the tests we could, but we couldn't find what was making Mrs. Farwell's arteries narrow and expand. It's only after your diagnosis did we realize what was going on." A beat later, he continued guiltily, "Mrs. Farwell was fine during her stay in the hospital up until last night. She returned to her initial state after our treatment. There was nothing strange at all. The lack of anything strange is what's strangest." Peregrine kept his hands behind his back as a grave expression crossed his face. "Dangerous changes are going on in her, but you doctors didn't even realize that." The other doctors kept their heads lowered. The other doctors kept their heads lowered. Peregrine looked at them the same way he looked at his past students. Without realizing it, he began to explain Roxanne's condition in detail to them. However, some were still confused by his explanation. "Old Mr. Lomax, we know about that, but what do we do now?" Peregrine snapped his brows together. "Do you really need to ask me that despite how clear I've made things out to be? Find a way to relax her arteries. Otherwise, she might not even be able to stay alive 3 days later." Everyone's hearts lurched when they heard that, and the doctors quickly inclined their heads before working on their respective tasks. Peregrine continued to watch them with somber eyes as the other doctors busied away. At the same time, there was a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Old Mr. Lomax, how long do you think Roxanne will be able to hang on for? Lucian was crestfallen as he listened to Peregrine's words earlier. When Peregrine heard Lucian's voice, he came back to his senses and shook his head grimly. Things aren't looking good for her. Lucian fixed his gaze on the elderly man as he waited for the latter to continue. Turning to the hospital bed, Peregrine asked, "Who is she to you?" "I'll be honest with you. Roxanne is my wife and the mother to my 3 children. I'll be willing to do anything as long as you cure her." His words were respectful but assertive. Peregrine's frown deepened, but he was not irked by Lucian's tone. "I'll be frank with you too. You look ill." Lucian pursed his lips in silence. He had neither slept nor rested for 2 whole days. His eyes were bloodshot, his lips were chapped, and he barely had any color to his face. Disgusted, the look on Peregrine's face darkened. The look on Peregrine's face darkened. "Getting her arteries to relax will take 3 days. If I haven't come up with anything in 3 days, then..." Peregrine did not finish his sentence, but those present could guess what he was going to say. If Peregrine could not come up with a treatment plan in 3 days, Roxanne would die. That was a fact unless Lucian were to accept Jack's request. Although he had mentally prepared himself for that possibility, Peregrine's words were still like a dagger that stabbed Lucian in the heart. Madeline and Jonathan were taken aback. "Even old Mr. Lomax can't think of a way to treat her? How ruthless is Jack?" The two tried not to show the dismay on their faces. In a calm tone, Jonathan asked, "Old Mr. Lomax, is there anything we can help you with?" Peregrine nodded. "Where is the library? I need to do some research." Jonathan instantly answered, "I know a library meant for those in the medical field. The books there have been sorted according to their genres, and they have many collections there. We have no time to waste, so let's head there right now." Jonathan immediately led Peregrine out with Frida. Soon, Madeline and Lucian were the only ones left in the corridor. Peregrine continued slowly, "She wouldn't survive past the 2nd day if I hadn't come." A flame of hope began burning in Lucian's heart. However, what came out of Peregrine's mouth next extinguished that flame. "But I can't come up with a plan right away. I'll need to do some research first." The light in Lucian's eyes went out. "Will Roxanne be able to hang on until you're done?" Soon, Madeline and Lucian were the only ones left in the corridor. "I'm going to go inside to take a look at Roxanne. Mr. Farwell, do you want to join me?" Madeline asked, trying not to look sad. Lucian gave a long look at the woman surrounded by doctors in the ward before looking away and shaking his head. Madeline could finally be sure that the man before her truly loved her good friend at the sight of his desolation. She was moved, but a wave of melancholy washed over her as well. She could not help but feel that their relationship had been a tumultuous one. "Roxanne will be fine. I trust her, and you should have faith in her too," Madeline said to him. With that, she turned around and went into the ward, tears springing into her eyes. Madeline had always been a tough individual, and she did not like shedding tears in front of anyone. Roxanne was the only one she felt comfortable enough to laugh and cry around. But now, the friend Madeline could be herself around was lying on the hospital bed, and she did not know if Roxanne would survive. Madeline did not even know who she should look for to vent the sorrow she felt. She walked over to the bed, and looking at her good friend's colorless face, she grabbed her hand. "Roxanne, you have to hang on. We're waiting for you. You have to get well soon." After taking a few seconds to calm herself down, Madeline sniffled and forced her tears away before readying herself to join the rest of the doctors. Lucien was standing in the corridor by himself. He was only a few steps away from Roxanne's bed, but he could not bring himself to lift his leg. Every time he looked at the woman's face, the ache in his heart would worsen. He dared not imagine what would happen 3 days later. If no one could think of a way to resolve Roxanne's condition after 3 days, then he would have to agree to Jack's requests and marry another woman. Everything about Roxanne would have nothing to do with him anymore. Roxanne had kept a distance from him even when Aubrey was only his fiancée in name back then. He was certain that she would be disgusted with him and would despise him if she were to wake up and find out that he had married another woman. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.